going to use both recent and new air measurements. So the number of folks here, good to see from Broomfield tonight, where we've been working the last 3.5 years. We've learned a lot there. Those data and other data will go into the analysis, the emissions model that we'll eventually be working on. Our focus is really on pre-production, so drilling and completions, and early production. So we're not going to go out so much and focus on pads that have been producing a long time. We're really focused on some of those more transient activities during pre-production and then the early phase of production. Second objective is broadly around characterizing noise. Mike has a poster that will talk more about the plans for noise measurements. And then our third objective is really about what we're doing here tonight and continuing to work on to engage various stakeholders, to learn from you, to provide you with information that will hopefully be useful to you. Part of this is developing this emissions predictive model. So say a community can think about, well, if there's a new operation and these sets of practices go into place, this is how we might expect emissions to look within a certain range. Next slide. So I mentioned our focus here. So we're definitely focused on big phases like drilling and fracking, flowback, and then early stages of production. And within those phases, there are lots of different choices about how the operations are done. And we've learned already that the specific practices make a big difference in terms of what the emissions are. But in addition to these main phases, one thing that we've learned really in Broomfield is a lot of the sort of transition phases that maybe haven't received as much attention historically also are points where sometimes we see larger emissions. So we're also having a major focus there. Next slide. So broadly, our monitoring approach is to focus on an individual pad with a variety of measurement assets. The CDPHE camel, which many of you are familiar with, will be out there, and some of our measurement focused posters have a bit of information about the camel, but Dan Bond will be over here too to tell you as much as you want to know about that particular facility. We then will be using weekly integrated samplers, and then we'll have higher time resolution measurements like as shown over here, where we're at high time resolution measuring a sort of aggregate of VOCs, and then when we detect episodes, we can trigger samples to characterize those in more detail. And then finally, we also have a mobile measurement platform. You can see an example in the back, as Anna mentioned. We're actually getting a new instrument we're excited about as part of this project that'll give us some really high time resolution, more detailed speciation capabilities, but you'll get a pretty good idea of the kinds of things we can do if you go out to the back. And I included here, just to iterate again, that we've learned so much in Broomfield about some of these emissions. You know, for example, you can't see the details here, but these are different phases: drilling, hydraulic fracturing, coiled tubing operations, production, flowback, and production. And we can see specific compounds really tightly associated with particular operations. Here we're seeing something that shows up primarily in drilling, and we see others in different stages. And then over here is just an example of these continuous monitors where we're looking constantly, and we'll have a couple of these around the pad to get better spatial coverage, where we can look for changes in sort of some set of VOCs, and then we trigger a sample and can characterize the composition of about 50 different compounds that tell us about the likely source type, as well as quantitative measurements of things like benzene and other toxins. Next slide. So where are we? Well, we really are just getting started. Our contract launched with HEI in February. So we're early on. We've been working on our quality assurance plan. We've been planning the stakeholder engagement event. We've been ordering equipment both for air and noise measurements. We're continuing to work to engage folks that are interested in learning about the study or perhaps being involved. And we are starting to work with CDPHE to identify some initial locations where we might go out and make measurements. We'll be measuring this year and next, and so we'll be moving around to multiple operations. So, you know, nobody knows which pad's necessarily going to be drilled a year from now, but we're hoping to start this summer, and so we're starting to talk about some initial areas to focus on. Next slide. Yes, so I wanted to invite Lisa up just to say a couple words, and then after that we'll send you off to see posters. We have a lot of graduate students and postdocs and scientists here at the different posters that you should have some fun interacting with. Lisa.
So I just want to just speak a little bit more to this stakeholder engagement and really say we're really interested in you as stakeholders being involved in this, both from what you might be able to help us with in the research, but also with how you want the results of our research communicated to you. Okay, and we're interested in all stakeholders, the community, the industry, and the regulators. So I just wanted to give that little, put that in your heads. And if you want to talk to me further about that, my poster is just around the cookies. You can take a left at the cookies and you will find them.
So thanks, Jeff and Lisa, and enjoy the posters and the food and the drinks. And also remember that there's a mobile monitoring van in the back, so please go back there as well. Thanks.